Hello, and welcome to Saturday Mourning Cartoons, the weekly podcast that revisits, reviews, and ridicules some of the world's weirdest animated series. I'm Dave Trumbore, and I'll be your daring on-air operations expert today. Joining me, as always, is the rock-solid and rugged land operations specialist, Sean Paul Ellis. How's it going, Sean?
David, I'm doing great. Yourself?
Woo. And from the Bay, our brilliant sea operations commander, Matt Barron.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
So, if you might have recognized from that little intro that we did there, we are going to talk about Centurions today. If you're not familiar with the Centurions, I'm about to give you a little bit of a rundown. It's an 80s cartoon, which you could pretty much pick up probably just from those names that we threw around, or just the fact that it was a Ruby Spears production. Now, we've talked about those guys before. Not a big fan of the Ruby Spears folks over here, but they've definitely churned out some interesting series over the years. What was that? Was that Turbo Teen we talked about before that was Ruby Spears?
I believe so.
Yeah,
yes.
I think it was too. So if you don't know what we're
Classic.
talking about, revisit that.
Classic Ruby Spears.
Classic Ruby Spears move. Yeah, so Ruby Spears, joint production with Japanese company Sunrise. The interesting thing about this one, actually, the comic book legends of Jack Kirby, who created Captain America, and Gil Kane, who either created or co-created more of the modern versions of Green Lantern, along with some other heroes. These guys both contributed to kind of the concept of the show and some of the designs. The designs are pretty interesting. We'll get to them in a little bit when we start talking about the characters.
It just sounded like when you said that, like you did an eye roll. Like
I kind of did.
These things, fucking things.
Imagine yourself, and we'll talk about this, but imagine yourself turned into a giant, like, primary colored Lego, and you kind of got an idea of what's going on here.
I want it already.
It's so good. But so this one ran in 1986. It really only ran for about 7 or 8 months, but they churned out 65 episodes in those 7 or 8 months.
How many episodes constitutes a season in the 80s? Is it just like willy-nilly?
Well, apparently they had 2 seasons, one of 5 episodes and one of 60 episodes, so it was nicely balanced.
It's that classic Japanese efficiency.
Yeah, and speaking of that, since we're a model of efficiency here, that's kind of all you need to know about this one as far as the history. Not many of the voice actors are really that famous or well-known or did a lot of other voice acting work. Some of them went on and did other live-action work. Frank Welker's in there somewhere, who we've talked about a number of times on this show, but he's only really listed as additional voices, which means he probably did some just some random character voices or a lot of creature work. He was known for doing that too. So
he probably just did Lucy or Shadow.
Probably Lucy. God, what a waste of a character.
What a nightmare.
So I'm going to turn it over to Matt now, who's going to kind of give us a little bit of an intro on this show and what it was about.
So the premise is, and I've got to love this, like the classic near future, because in 1986, I've got to imagine the near future was probably in and about the year 2000.
Yep.
Which, my God, did they get it wrong? So,
wait, what do you mean?
Yeah. Oh, God, I've got this fucking jetpack strapped to my back. I mean, am I the only one? Am I it? Yeah.
But I just walk around in my Lego suit all day. I don't know what's wrong
exactly. With me. So, you've got your classic evil genius, Doc Terror, who is a cyborg, and I've got to tell you, he is possibly the worst cyborg I've ever seen. But, he's got the classic, Napoleon complex, want to conquer the earth situation. He has a right-hand man who, ironically enough, has a mixer for a right hand.
He's a walking Cuisinart, yeah.
Exactly. KitchenAid just took their cues from them. So he is named Hacker, and he's the kind of sidekick and kind of the commander of the armies, if you will. And there were 3 types of drones that Doc Terror created. They were traumatizers, and God knows that was an
such a great name.
Which was they were basically the walking robots who had a rocket that shot out of their ass. Strafer, which were the flying robots, and I've got to tell you, I was kind of into the Strafers. They look great. Groundborgs, not really into those so much.
Not so much.
But essentially, it's your classic good versus evil. Doc Terror mixed with Hacker, plus the drones, really kind of just steamheaded everything. The thing that I found interesting about the 2 of them was that there were only 2 kind of cyborg commanders, and the rest of them were robots. There were no other, sort of man-Borg situations. But
I kind of feel like their quest, like Doc Terror's and Hacker's quest for like world domination and to like control the Earth, like I feel like it was a really lonely journey.
Yeah, there's no one with them. Like Matt said, except all of those robots. There's a couple people peppered in.
There was Doc Terror's daughter, who was a smoking hottie. But I digress.
She shows up for like the first episode, and then we watched like the 5-part miniseries, which was season 1. And so Amber, Doc Terror's daughter, shows up in like the first episode, and then she disappears. And we didn't watch any more of the 5 episodes. I would love to know if she comes back.
I will tease you with this. I didn't get to watch these episodes because, like I said, there's 65 of them. I don't know exactly which one she pops up in. She does show up some more. I believe she has a twin sister. Stay with me now. Sister who is a practitioner of, I believe, dark magic. And
that sounds accurate.
Yeah, and Asa McCloud falls in love with her.
I hope the reason that she's been gone is she's just in therapy. Like she's just sitting like on a therapist couch. She's like, my dad's half robot, half machine, but I'm really having a hard time.
And he's like 100% crimson, and he has a weird like bowl cut that I don't appreciate.
Sometimes his robotic part fuses with another guy's robotic parts. It's a weird thing.
It's the near future.
Once you factor in visitation rights, I mean, it just all comes together. A court order makes it make sense.
Well, since we've been talking about these characters a little bit, let's get into them too. And let's start with the title characters, the Centurions. What the hell are these guys all about?
Okay, so Max Ray is a, quote, brilliant sea operations commander. Didn't see a lot of the brilliance, but...
relative to the other 2 idiots running around.
Exactly. He's kind of like the de facto leader of the team. He really kind of... provides a lot of the, mission leadership, but his, Centurion outfit is basically set to operate in, sea conditions. And, some of his, actually, the stuff that they beam down to him is great. Jake Rockwell.
Well, let's talk about, so we said beam down to him. I feel like we're losing some people.
How do they beam them down?
What? So he's wearing, he's wearing this costume that's like a green... green like bodysuit with weird nodules all over it that looks like a Lego.
Right. It actually really works like a Lego. So Skyvault, which is basically the depot for all of these different operational loadouts that they have, would beam down different loadouts. And it wasn't like a one-time thing like, hey, we'll beam it down in the beginning and then you're on your own. They could switch out at any time.
Yeah, so it's a space station that beams this stuff down to these guys. And
all I have to do is just call up Crystal Kane. She is the lovely redhead that is sitting aboard Skyvault, and she's happy to beam down missiles anywhere in the world whenever these guys are like, we need to blow something up. She's like, oh, I got it, guys, no problem.
Yeah, and I've got to tell you, I know a lot of people that have been through rehab for Crystal Kane problems. So, going on to Jake Rockwell, who is a rugged land operational specialist.
He is indeed.
He's kind of like your, stereotypical G.I. Joe, like land operations guy. His weapon systems have the most firepower. But again, they're best suited to land. And then we have Ace McCloud, closet rapist, who
I don't even think it's closet. He's just out and out rapist.
No, that's true. So facing multiple sex offender convictions, but still seems to suit up in the blue power suit and go out there and slap asses left and right.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say, like, Ace McCloud is out of the three between him, Max, Jake, and Ace has the most personality.
Definitely.
He's also easily the most misogynistic out of the 3. And I mean, like, I guess I just never picked up on this, like, being 6 years old and watching this show, just how, how rude he is to Crystal. Like, every time he, calls for, a weapon system.
And guess what?
Like,
it works. It fucking works.
It works.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to wonder, if it's one of those things where, did we grow? I'm starting to look for this, in the shows that we're watching.
Right.
And this is a bigger overarching question. Is just what about the rampant sexism and misogyny are in these cartoons? Because I mean, Dave, I know I had this conversation with you that it just seems like Ace McCloud would he'd like, if you were a woman, he would reach over and like grab your butt, and you would rightfully so get very angry, and then he'd look you square in the eyes and just be like, "Cool it, toots."
And he actually,
and you'd be like,
yeah.
And like, it's ridiculous.
His dialogue is almost exactly like that. Like, Sean's not even really stretching it that far. There's a scene where he's at a carnival, and he's in this, like, spaceship flying around with these two women, and they like, transport the entire pod that he's in of this carnival ride, leaving these women stranded because he's like, "You stay there, ladies, and old Ace will be back in a jiff," or something like that. It's amazing.
Dave, can you just keep talking like you're from the 1950s?
I wish I would have wrote them down and just been like, keep an eye on Hitler. He's a real bad egg.
Yeah. You know who should be put on the roll? A Kaiser.
He's basically that guy, like that kind of shtick.
Yeah,
that kind
I
of
mean,
bravado.
it's hilarious, but the thing is that it really plays into that like 1980s like Top Gun kind of thing, but at the same time, like, you're totally right. He's like totally misogynistic. Like, let's fast forward to the near future when Ace McCloud is kicked out of the Air Force and basically has got to go through like all sorts of hell to get his life back because he's been basically grabbing asses in every bar he's ever been.
You joke, but I'm like kind of obsessed with this show. This is one of my favorite shows as a little kid that like nobody seemed to watch. I want to see a movie franchise built around this. But
I had the Max Ray, Jake Rockwell, and Ace McCloud plus Doc Terror action figure for this show. Like, I loved this show.
So good.
Yeah, and I've got to say, the intro out of all the shows we've watched so far is by far the best.
It's really good. And guess what? They just tell you the entire, like, everything you need to know right in that intro. In the near future, and then they're like, Doc Terror's wreaking havoc on the world, and they're like, oh, there's these three guys that are just going to kick ass, and they'll take care of it. Don't worry about it.
And it's so Japanese.
It really is.
So I really like, Japanese anime from the 80s, the kind of like, Robotech, like Macross kind of series. And there's so much crossover there. I'm like, Jesus, I am watching Macross right now. Yeah. It's all the same. And it's great.
That's so good. But let's talk about the villainous side of things. We kind of mentioned Doc Terror and Hacker a little bit. We more or less described them, but I feel like they need a little bit more description because they're bizarre. Like, when they first come onto the scene, they really do kind of steal it because you're just like, what the hell are these guys? Like, the heroes, okay, they're walking around in their Lego suits. You kind of get it fairly quickly. These guys are like barely human. They're stomping around in these giant metal...
Barely human. Dave, they are monstrous.
They are monstrous.
Like, they are nightmares. It's like somebody just decided, they were just like, you know what, I want to be part man and part robot, but I also want to be part nightmare. And just like... it's amazing. Like, and this obviously isn't something that like I don't believe. I mean, I didn't watch the episode, and I don't know if they delve into this, but like, I really want to know like what happened. Like, if Doc Terror, if he is in fact a doctor,
I don't know what his credentials are. Like, if he went to like a Caribbean Institute, I don't know.
Yeah, they never do that flashback episode.
Yeah.
But like, I want to know
the
like,
South Congo School for Evil.
Yeah, I don't know if he graduated with honors from that or not.
But like, they never really like they don't get into it, like, about like how he is so like grotesquely disfigured. I mean, because the only like discernible portion of him that's actually still human is his face.
Yeah, and only half of it, because half of it is just an android.
Half of it, and the other half of it is just like like a mirror and like just
and not
teeth,
not
like
only,
he was a Bond villain.
Not only the headpiece, like I was thinking, kind of going into this, okay, I'm going to get like a Borg style headpiece with like some sort of eye augmentation. No, he just blocks off half of his face.
It's like a pirate eye patch.
Like 3/4. He just puts like a Roman shade on that shit, except he's got like his mouth in the other eye. I'm like, you are not a doctor. I mean, why would you lose your depth perception? You've got a hand on one side and then a laser cannon on the other.
Yeah, you have opted for a laser cannon instead of a hand.
But here's the thing: is like they're symmetrically inaccurate. Like,
unless you're constantly in battle, that laser cannon is going unused in your day-to-day stuff.
And here's the creepy part. Now, I don't know if you guys watched enough episodes to see this, but they do get even more nightmarish. So they're half human, more or less, and half just this like robotic, synthetic android half. Now, what they can do, Baron talked about the different types of drones earlier on. These guys can actually detach their cyborg part, and they can take half of a strafer, which is the small jet drone kind of thing. They can connect themselves to that so they can fly into battle as like a half airplane, half human at this point. It's disturbing when you watch it. It's really disturbing, but it's cool. It's a cool villain. But like as you watch him, so like Doc Terror's all in red, like really like a bright crimson. Hacker's kind of like half naked for some reason. I don't know why he's like kind of topless. It's weird.
He's got like his nipples exposed.
It's very straight, like a corset. He's wearing like a cyborg corset, and he's bald for some reason.
He's pioneering the sun's out, guns out, bro attitude.
Just the worst.
Plus, he's shredded, literally.
Kinda. But the weird thing is, if you look, their suits, the parts that aren't cybernetic, they kind of look like the Centurion suits. So there's got to be something back in their history that maybe they had a joint kind of technology, you know.
And that's what I want to. What I want to know. Like, that's the story that like I would have loved for them to have gotten into. But I mean, it's just as it is. It is these two monstrous nightmares that are asymmetric, that are like, you know, just completely
stomping around everywhere,
just creeping along. Like, I mean, he doesn't even like. I mean, for Doc Terror, like, there's one episode where he just like he places like his gun turret hand on somebody's shoulder, and it's just like you have the technology to either put an egg beater on that or a giant claw. Like, just do one or the other, buddy.
Well, to give you even more nightmares, and we'll get into the episodes after a brief mention of some more characters here, but to give you even more nightmares, there's technically two episodes. It's a two-part episode called The Better Half, where Doc Terror and Hacker's cyborg parts, which are called Syntax and Legion, respectively, they detach, and those two somehow form together to form the sentient robot Uniborg, who kind of like rebels. Yep, who rebels against their human halves. So that's just a little bit of the insanity. Before we get on to the episodes, I want to talk about a couple other side characters. We mentioned Crystal Kane. She has an orangutan named Lucy for some reason. That's never explained.
Never explained.
Never explained. Don't know why she's hanging out on the space station. Maybe the Russians sent her up there as a test, and she was just hanging out when the Centurion people got
her. Here, you keep it.
Yeah, I don't know. So she just kind of hangs around. She occasionally does something useful. Usually not. There's like a weird dog running around. I think it's Max's dog, right?
Yeah. No, it's Jake
Jake's dog.
Okay. It's Jake.
So Shadow.
Jake owns a dog named Shadow,
who also has kind of a weird little suit that it wears sometimes, but it's pretty useless too. However, the characters that are slightly more interesting are the affirmative action Centurions. One is a ginger named Rex Charger. Hey, you're a minority. I can't. Sean's a ginger, by the way, in case you don't know. Who is what, like an energy specialist, whatever the hell that means.
Yeah.
And then
terrible.
The classic.
Well, you know, hey man, in the near future, we've got a lot of different energy going on.
Yeah, that's true. Ginger energy. You know, bring this guy in, Rex Charger, and my personal favorite, the Native American edition, John Thunder. Because if you're gonna bring him in for affirmative action, you might as well make it as racist as possible.
John Thunder.
This is more offensive than Pharrell wearing a war bonnet on the cover of Elle magazine.
I was going to say oh my god, that's so racist. Like, here's what I'm playing through in my mind: the near future. John Thunder is crying on the side of a freeway as somebody throws trash.
As Ace McCloud flies overhead and just dumps trash on him.
Yeah. Or
I just think it's adorable because I mean, like, let's be honest. Like, I don't like. I think.
Wait, you think racism is adorable?
It can
no,
be.
Shut up. All right, it cannot be adorable. Racism cannot be adorable. So I think the thing to like keep in mind is that like they say like in the near future, and like there's nothing but white people in this show.
Well, that's why they brought him in. I don't even know what episode
I think it's adorable that they were just like, oh yeah, the future. We'll pepper it in with some redheads and a Native American.
And that's it. That's all they got. And just to add insult to injury, John Thunder is the infiltration specialist. So he's a sneaky engine, is basically what they're saying.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible. But speaking of terrible, let's get on to some of these episodes because there is no consistency whatsoever. You'll go from a straight terrorist plot to an alien creature to a lost world populated with dinosaurs from one to the next.
I think my favorite thing about this though is that for the beginning of this 5-part miniseries that like they don't try to explain any of the history. They don't like everything else that we've watched where like you see like A to B to C and so on. Like, this just drops you in
right into it.
At, like, M, and it's like, you'll figure out the rest of it. Don't worry.
I had to
we'll
double
either
check.
explain it to you, or it won't be. I did, too.
Yeah, I had to make sure it was the right first one, yeah.
Right, I did the same exact thing. I was like, am I watching? I think it's called like Fire in the Sky.
The Sky is on Fire.
The Sky is on Fire. And so like I'm watching The Sky is on Fire and I'm like, this cannot be, like they're not explaining anything.
Nope.
And then I was like, oh, they just don't care. Like, oh, neither do I. Like,
yeah, I like
so
that.
I was able to just kind of like get into it. And they do that with every episode. Like, you know, whatever backstory and history they need, we'll pick it up and we'll figure it out later. But like marching on, Doc Terror. Doing stuff, gotta stop.
Doing terror stuff.
Doing terror
that a doc
stuff.
might do. Yeah, it was great though because like each of these I think was written by like a different maybe comic writer, or they're very episodic. It's not like a serialized thing where one thing leads to the next. It's almost like picking up different issues of comic books where shit, this guy died in episode 3 but he's back in episode 6 and they didn't explain it. It's like who cares? It's just individual stories, which kind of makes it kind of cool actually. I like the way that they did it. It's a little frustrating at times, but it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Sky is on Fire.
It jumps around and it just feels like everything's very non sequitur. But I mean, like, you know, if you're thinking about this, like, in terms of how everything's organized, like, you know, if you're a kid and you're sitting down Saturday morning, 86, and you're watching this stuff, like, you're not necessarily paying attention or you're grasping everything from week to week. And so, I mean, just that non sequitur episodic feel, I think lends itself sometimes very well to these Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah, especially because they intro something, we got a problem, these guys are going to solve it, and they're going to solve it in a half an hour with some commercials. That's all you need to know. And they do it, and they do a really good job of it. I mean, Sky is on Fire starts off.
Buy the toys from Kenner.
And then you buy all the Kenner toys, exactly. So, like, Sky is on Fire starts off with a double dose of terror from Doc Terror, because not only does he just light the entire sky on fire, and how does he do that? Do you guys remember how he did that? The least plausible way possible. So there's this belt of radiation apparently around the... I don't even think... Is it around the Earth? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's called
it was like
Van Allen...
it was like approaching the Earth.
Yeah, Van Allen belt that's just kind of like a radiation layer that borders the Earth. Now remember, this is in outer space, so no oxygen out there for any kind of incendiaries, but whatever, that's not cartoon logic. So Doc Terror just, out of nowhere, just lights the sky on fire. You would think that maybe that's like his terroristic threat. Like maybe he was going to ransom, like, if you don't give me a couple $1 million, I'm going to light the sky on fire. No, fuck it. He just lights it on fire. Done. Within the first, like, 10 minutes.
Well, they explain to you that, like, right off the bat, they show you this weapon that it can... it basically is like a giant fire extinguisher.
Yeah, it's the cryo laser. Yeah.
Thank you. And so the cryo laser can, like, very quickly cool and chill, like, a large fire, like, on top of, like, a residential building. And so they're just like, this is a big deal. Like, and then the doctor, or the scientist who creates it, is just like, you're going to deliver this right into Doc Terror's hands. And it's just like, whoa, what is happening? And like, I mean, it just...
Yeah, that's our first introduction to Hacker, who like hides in a crate and then just bursts out.
Just bursts out.
Yeah.
Like, which is just phenomenal. So this cryo laser is...
Was that the cryo laser firing up?
Yeah, that was the cryo laser. There you go. So this cryo laser is like Doc Terror's plan, you know, is to just simply light the sky like on fire.
Yeah, step one.
And then you find out that like later on, like it's his plan all along to use the cryo laser to cool everything off, but like not before like he negotiates with like the president. And like I'm kind of floored over like some of the logic of the fact that he's like, I'll just do this. Like Doc Terror's like, I'll just do this. I'll light the sky on fire, and then I'll wait to hopefully get the payout from it, and then I'll use the cryo ray.
Well, here's the crazy thing. So like the world temperature is rising by degrees, and basically at one point they're like, oh, in 2 hours it'll be 180 degrees and everything on Earth will die. Like I guess except Doc Terror and Hacker. Because they're robots. They never say like this is going to affect our circuits, or maybe my daughter who happens to be in on this plan and is entirely human has no thought for her. She knew getting into it. Well, that's why we don't see her again for 20 episodes. She's cooked. And they have like their base is like in what is like the North Pole somewhere. Yeah. They're basically like they took over Santa's workshop and just like just operate from up there, which is the least convenient place in the world. And by the third episode, the Centurions know exactly where they are anyway, because they send, I think it's the fourth episode, they send like a giant sandworm up there to like just harass them, and that completely disappears by the episode after that, which is just one of these bizarre little jumps that they go through.
It's like I love the fact that that Ace, Jake, and Max have to meet up with the president, and the president's basically like, "We're negotiating with terrorists," and they're just like, "Oh, come on, really?" He's like,
"Come on, yep. Obama."
And that's like, and they just accept it. It's just like, okay, we'll still go on a secret mission to try to thwart his plan, but okay, you go negotiate.
Yeah,
like,
I'll go kind of undercover. Yeah.
Yeah. Not really. They didn't even. There was no undercover.
They
scaled the side of the base.
The only undercover was that he was not wearing his Lego suit on the outside. He had like a trench coat over it. And then as soon as he took it off, he's like, "A Centurion!" It was so good.
I think the fact that like they have here's my question.
Shoot.
All right, they have all of these amazing weapon sets that they can beam down from Skyvault at any time. But yet when they have to do something that's like as manual and as physically intensive as climb the side of a mountain to infiltrate somebody's base, they just decide that they're just like, yeah, we'll just like, we'll solo it. Like we'll free climb up the side of this cliff face and not use the rocket jetpacks that we have. Like, we'll just do it by himself. Like, how does this make any sense? Like,
it really doesn't, but I mean, none of the episodes really make sense from one to the next. Like, one I really want to talk about before we get on to some more of the miscellaneous stuff, like some dialogue and some of the weapon systems themselves to kind of explain it a little bit better. So, the first episode, we've got this, like, world-ending terroristic threat, right? The guys take care of that, everything's fine, the world kind of comes back to normal. The second episode, we're not going to delve into it too much because it was kind of rote, just kind of followed the same things. But it shows that Doc Terror can not only create other robots and cyborgs and things like that, he can create a fish man named Mako, who never shows up again. He just creates like this weird merman to assault this undersea lab.
It did kind of remind me of like Voltron, like whenever they would create like like the monster for that episode and just like send them out. And so I mean my idea, or at least my thought behind this, was that like they were trying to gauge like where they wanted to go, because I mean, you know, they're borrowing like ideas like sort of like from G.I. Joe.
Oh yeah.
And you know, from a lot of other different.
Well, just like, the comics guys do. The comics influence is heavy here. They get to kind of play in their own sandbox, but they pull in elements from other things, which is
exactly.
kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's very fun. And so like I think that's like one of those things where they were like, let's test this out and see what it is, and like, you know, hey. If we, or sort of even like He-Man and Skeletor, like every time like Skeletor would come up with this like new creature that he discovered or created or found, and you know, and like I think Mako was like maybe one of those things where they're just like, well, we made him and we can obviously make a toy off.
That's exactly it. So the other thing is to make toys,
like yeah,
Mako.
So I mean, I could see where that would lend itself to be successful in a cartoon that is trying to sell toys.
Yeah, and they do some interesting things. So like we talked about, Ace is kind of the Lord of the Skies here. Jake kind of takes care of everything on land. Max takes care of stuff in the water. So they do some interesting interplay with different plots. So sometimes, like for whatever reason, in the second episode, Jake was like touring the undersea lab. So you've got the land guy under the ocean just taking a tour of their like weapons manufacturing facility. So of course,
I mean, I think you could call that I think you could call that a classic fish out of water
That's
scenario.
Exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is.
You know, the interesting, I know that we said that Mako doesn't show up, but he actually does show up in later episodes.
Oh, does he?
So
okay. Yeah.
I do want to note that there are some, like, I feel like anytime that they have stuff that, like, happens under the sea, they're just like, yeah, let's just call up Mako.
Yeah,
like,
might as well. He's hanging around. Just
better call Mako.
Mako looks more like, he looks
Get
more
your car
like
painted. You need a
fishman. Yeah, fishman. Yeah. He looks way more kind of like, you know, more fish than shark. So when they called him Mako and they were kind of like debuting him out of that pressure cooker, I was like, all right, nice. We've got some sort of Sharkman shit going on here. Just kidding. Like,
just for 10 minutes.
He straight up looked like Merman from He-Man.
Yeah, he did.
Dude, he looked like the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Pretty much a combination
Straight
of those
rip-off.
But speaking of interesting creatures, Matt, I know one of your favorite creatures was in this third episode, so I want you to kind of talk a little bit about this. Because we get away from Doc Terror and Hacker and just go up into space as the guys are like tracking some random comet. And what do they find in this comet?
So they find this sort of bipedal cat, you know, creature, which was weird because it had, you know, 2 legs, 2 arms, and then these like kind of back tendril things.
Yeah.
But they kept referring to it as Kitty. They kept making these sort of.
It's Ace just running around being like, "Calm down, Kitty." Yeah, just the entire time.
You know, like it's just a pissed off house cat. But The thing that kind of cracked me up about it is it kept making these jaguar sounds, except, there's no real, it didn't walk on four legs, so it was this real, huge disconnect.
Just a weird stock sound that they found. They're like, cat creature.
Yeah, they're like, we're out of money, and this sounds good. So the great thing that I like about it is this creature absorbs energy and grows stronger, as it absorbs energy, which is, always kind of your go-to classic sci-fi plot.
Especially when you have good guys that are armed with mostly lasers.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, when you've got
thing.
energy, just feeding it left and right. So the great thing about this is that, the creature didn't have any cybernetics. It didn't have any, cannons or guns or anything like that.
Right.
It would just shoot lasers from its chest, which after the maybe third or fourth scene where, they would just go straight to the chest laser thing, I wrote down as I was taking notes on this, cat with titty lasers.
That was the original title of this episode.
Yeah.
Cat with titty lasers.
And
Let's do
obviously
it.
that didn't play with, clear
standards and practices,
so, Exactly. So I was just like, okay, if they could have animated it a little better where they were it was more like an energy field that would just project forward, that would be great. But the fact that it's shot literally from the cat's chest.
Yeah. So
that's
good.
The thing where I was like, and we're done.
Smartest creature probably on the entire series. Probably, smarter than the human characters. Definitely the orangutan, because it would just
certainly smarter than Doc Taylor.
Oh man. But he wasn't even involved with it. That's kind of the crazy thing. We're getting a little short on time, so I want to...
here's the amazing thing, though, is there was no diplomacy. It's not at any point in time where they're just we should try to communicate with this alien life form.
Hyper intelligent and advanced. No, just freeze it, send it out into the depths of space, and we'll be done with it, and let's just get back to Doc Terror fights. Yeah. But we're going to jump into some other stuff, like some dialogue. We definitely need to talk about the weapon systems. I do just want to mention one more quick tidbit. I think we kind of mentioned dinosaurs in a lost world at some point. There's an episode called Found, a Lost World, or something like that. It's basically a precursor to Dino Riders, because Doc Terror lands. Yeah, he lands on this place where just dinosaurs still exist, and there's this weird humanoid reptilian race that can telepathically link up with the dinosaurs.
Doc Terror and Hacker and a dirigible that gets shot down right outside of a cave, and he's just I think I found a portal into another world. And just oh my god,
and he just instantly.
What are the chances, buddy?
Yeah, well, he instantly, as soon as he sees these dinosaurs, he's like, "Yep, Dinoborgs. That's what I've been planning all along." And he has this dream sequence later on where he just sees Dinoborgs roaming the city streets and just wreaking havoc everywhere. It's fantastic. It's so good.
I love it.
But let's get into some of these. I don't know. Do you want to talk dialogue? Do you want to talk weapon systems? Because they're both equally cheesy, I think.
So I like to talk dialogue because I think for a lot of the cartoons that we've talked about and we've discussed so far, catchphrases are obviously a very important thing, and I think it's also very important to stick with one catchphrase that's not overpowering, it's not overwhelming,
but kids can get it.
And kids can get it, and they can kind of rally behind it. And I think that this show, I think the Centurions did a wonderful job of having one catchphrase. They used it often in the show, but it had a very specific reason, and that's because every time a weapon system got power or shot down from Skyvault, they would all just hold their hands in an X shape, and they would all just go power extreme,
and it would reverberate.
It was amazing. But I the first episode, even just watching that, I was done with it. I was walking around the house power extreme, and I want to yell at people in the street.
I did it, and I pulled a hamstring, so you got to be real careful when you're doing that.
Did you? How did you scream that at somebody and pull a hamstring?
Super out of shape. Or maybe I was running away from them when they pulled a gun on me because I shouted power extreme in their face.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely spreading out your arms and legs when somebody's pointing a gun at you is the way to go.
It worked for the Centurions. I just didn't have my Lego suit on, man.
Oh god. It's so good. Even when they were I think my favorite thing is that even in the third episode when they are the alien affair, when they're up on Skyvault, they're next to their weapon systems, and they're right there.
Yeah, they're right
and all
there.
they could do is they could just put them
plug it on,
they could
pick it
attach
up,
them into their Lego, and they just still go Power Extreme, and like they are loving it.
And they have this great animation sequence each time too. That like they just like rotate in midair as this stuff's like snapping onto them, slamming on them.
Do you think that like screaming that battle cry was like more for them? Like it was less about like it was
a psychological.
Like,
it was a war cry. Yeah, it was berserk
it was their war cry. Like it got so exciting.
I think
but
it was.
You know what's interesting? It kind of goes back to like some of the late '80s, early '90s stuff, like say Captain Planet.
Right.
You know, where you go the constant like by your powers combined, I'm Captain Planet, blah blah blah. But every time they combine the powers, they would go through that animation sequence every single time. Right. Like no matter how unnecessary it is, like that's just a good way to eat up. 45
it's just space filler, and you can just recycle it over and over and over, and that's what these guys did. Yeah,
guys, we're a little short on plot, so let's just if we do like the combining like 3 times in the show, that's like 3.5 minutes.
The kids love it.
Cut down the writing.
They'll eat it up.
Yeah, the kids love it. Exactly.
So they do this each time that these guys get a new weapon system beamed down, which early on happens once or twice, and on later episodes they're switching these things like every 30 seconds. They're just going nuts, and they're like switching. Like Ace will be in the sky, and he's like, "Crystal, you dame, get rid of Sky Knight. I need Skybolt." So like she takes Sky Knight off, and he's like free falling through space and just getting a raging boner at the same time, and then she just beams down Skybolt onto him like as he's free falling. So let's talk about some of these names of these weapon systems. Well, first, I want to ask, what were your guys' favorite characters of the 3, and then your favorite weapon system too, if you remember it? I can go first because Ace was actually
So I think as a kid, I think my favorite was Max Ray.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because I remember really digging like the green outfit, and I remember liking like the.
So yours was a fashion choice. It had nothing to do with.
Well, mine was. Well, I really like the aquatic. Shut up. I really like the aquatic stuff that he had. I thought that was all really cool, and pretty unique among like the 3 main Centurions. But like watching this now, 100% Ace McCloud.
Yeah, it has to be.
Like. Just leave it to the sky, Marshal, or whatever.
Whatever he says. Sky Captain in the world of tomorrow.
It's just so good, and I think Orbital Interceptor had to have been my favorite.
He's basically a space shuttle at that point.
He's a space shuttle.
He's a space shuttle with a man trapped inside.
It was easily the funniest thing that I saw in episode 3, and I was just like, this is insane.
The funniest
thing,
I
loved it.
The funniest thing I think I saw was when Ace was in Skybolt, which is kind of like a beefed up thing.
It's like a B-52.
Well, it's ridiculous. It's like a jetpack. But anyway, he's like fighting this sandworm. The sandworm just like grabs him with his mouth, just bites him out of the sky, and just throws him into the sand. And Ace is just like his one wing is like sticking up out of the sand. It's freaking hilarious. But Matt, what was your favorite?
I think it was the warthog for Jake Rockwell.
No.
Wild Weasel.
Wild Weasel, brother. Get your mammals correct.
Yes, my bad.
The Wild Weasel. That's the best name.
Not up on my.
How could you forget that one? They used it so often.
It's kind of his go-to.
Here's the thing, like a lot of the other guys like special suits, they had an independent helmet with like a clear viewing screen across their eyes. That suit locked in his face, and it was basically like, he
was basically Turbo T, just advanced.
Exactly. Yeah. You have your face covered. You have your basically. It's like a motorcycle that gets friendly with your downstairs.
It was
parts.
Basically the Batpod thing from Dark
exactly.
Knight.
So like, I mean, the thing is on one hand, I really like it because it had the most firepower. On the other hand, I abhor it because it was the most inefficient thing ever. Like, and not only did they not show like, kind of a first-person Jake Rockwell view. Like, it would have been great if they just said like, hey, he's got a screen in there, like he's targeting a bunch of different stuff. Like that would have worked for me. But the fact that they just block off his face and he's like, all right, let's do this. That doesn't really work for me.
It was good though. Just every time they got these names.
It was great.
And the fact that it was the go-to, like, oh, we've got a lot of land, we need to cover here. We've got a lot of enemies, like a lot of firepower. That was really great. On the other hand, I was like, this is the most comical thing I've ever seen. Keep this coming.
Yeah, so good. Now,
well, I mean, I loved like for Jake, like the detonator. Yep. Like, it was just like a giant, like, cannon that's strapped onto his chest.
Yeah, and they had, like, reinforcing, like, feet behind him so he didn't just get destroyed by the force of this cannon.
Oh,
it was the designs are really cool though. So like Ace was my favorite just because he could fly around. I was always pissed though because he only had three weapon systems that he could use: a jetpack, a B-52, and a space shuttle. That's pretty much it. Now Max, he had 4, and they kind of like ranged from like kind of like a jetpack in the water type thing to like this massive kind of like really destructive depth charging type thing. Jake had 6 different things that he could do, and he could ski with this stuff. He could fly. He had a helicopter thing that let him fly. So he was basically all of them in one. And my favorite,
those helicopter attachments are hilarious.
So good. He's just flying around in this like weird little like half jetpack helicopter thing. My favorite part about Jake, I believe he was voiced by like a 60-year-old Brooklyn guy. So he's always just kind of like, hey, I'm going to take care of all these things, and, you can get a few if you can, too. And I hope that your first child is a masculine child. So it's like...
Yo, why don't we take care of these robots over here and then go get a slice of pizza?
Hey, they call me Joey Clams over here. It's so bizarre. But I just need to get that last part.
I wanted to let the both of you go as long as possible.
That's so good.
Dave, I know you were holding on to that for at least 5 days, so I'm really happy you got that.
I was, and it wasn't nearly as good as I had intended because I'm tired.
Well, I'm glad you got there, though.
Well, unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our time here, so we're going to do a couple little miscellaneous thoughts if you guys had anything, and I want to know your recommendations if you recommend this one.
Oh, I definitely recommend this one. I mean, I think that, like... I remember growing up and watching this on television. I remember having the toys. Like this was a lot of nostalgia baked into this cartoon for me, and so it was really great to watch it again. And I was actually a little bit curious. Like I was surprised that like I moved from being fascinated about Max Ray to the misogyny of Ace McCloud, just because like I you don't notice character traits like when you're 6 or 7 years old and watching these things, but like just the fact that like Ace was a stronger character to fight some of the sexism that is inherent in his character. Like he's interesting to watch. They do function and operate well as a team, and so it's good to see. And I really thought Ace, like for the longest time, was the leader. I was surprised like when
he's the
strongest
to read more
character. About them.
Right.
Yeah, to read more about them and just be like, oh yeah, Max Ray. I'm like, he's got a mustache. That doesn't make him a leader.
Yeah, he's the Tom Selleck of the trio. Matt,
how about
you?
Oh my God, Dave! I'm so happy you thought that up. I saw like a still image of him. Like, Jesus Christ! They just ported Tom Selleck's face into like a cartoon form.
Put him in a green Lego suit. There you go.
He's the Magnum PI of the Centurions.
So I'm going to assume that you recommend it based on that description alone.
You know what? I was going to say that. I mean, this is one of those classic '80s sort of. U.S.-Japan crossover cartoons. I mean, I thought it was great. In the 80s, I'm sure this thing with the intro, with the plot, be whatever it is that it is, I'm sure, it just would have crushed, especially from the merchandising standpoint, because I can personally remember from my childhood somebody having a Doc Terror action figure, and I was like,
nightmare.
This thing looks like Dick. What the fuck? I mean, hey, it made an impression on my psyche for one way or the other, but it was good. I would check it out. I mean, at least watch the 5-part series. It's 30 episodes or 30 minutes apiece. Watch it. And, if for some reason you are drawn to the rest of the episodes, treat yourself.
Yeah,
just speaking of the episodes, I found all of them on Dailymotion.
Yeah, there's a lot out there on the internet that you can find. Unfortunately, they have the 5-part miniseries that starts the whole thing off for sale on Amazon, but nothing else has been released. So, I mean, you can get those first 5 episodes, but it's kind of unfortunate. But that sounds like 3 thumbs up.
Unfortunately, they're for sale? Yeah.
No, I mean, I would have watched them, but, what are you going to do? But yeah, go check this one out. Unfortunately, that's pretty much all the time we have for today. So, do you guys have anything coming up you want to let the listeners know about? That's a big no from me, too.
I'll be doing a bunch of shows in July and August, waiting for the dates on those, but we'll be doing improvised TED Talks.
Oh, nice.
In DC for Washington Improv Theater, so you can check out more WashingtonImprovTheater.com. And you can find me on Twitter, which I hardly use, or Instagram. I use that a little bit more.
Yeah.
And both accounts are at Sean Paul Ellis.
Well, hopefully you guys are going to talk about the technology of the Centurions and how they beam that stuff down to them, because I'd like to...
100%.
Yeah, that's a good TED Talk. You can find me at Dr. Claw MD on Twitter. You can also find me over at Collider.com. Matt, where can we find you on Twitter?
I am at MattSF07, and I have a series of short stories I'll be uploading soon, so check back for those.
Yeah, and we'll have all that information up on our website, which is SaturdayMourningCartoons.com. And remember, that's morning with a U. You can also find us over at Tumblr at SaturdayMourningCartoons.tumblr.com. Sean's been doing a really good job keeping up all sorts of insane GIFs and graphics, and I miss the pugs. I'm going to keep bringing that up because I missed the pugs.
They were if you want, SeanPaulEllis.tumblr.com has plenty of dogs and pizza on it. So that's pretty much
all you need.
Pretty much all that my personal site has on it is just dogs and pizza.
That's fantastic.
So
there you go. That's how to find out more about us. Now, coming up next week, Sean, since it's your pick, do you want to give the viewers a little bit of or listeners a little bit of a tease? What's coming up?
I brought up the lyrics for the theme song.
Give us another slow jam read. I love it.
So we should be like we've been talking and we've been watching a lot of like masculine kind of battle
lasers,
oriented
muscles,
cartoons over the last couple weeks.
Right.
So you've been hitting the weights.
Yes, hitting the weights. So I wanted to tone it down a little bit and go into something a little bit silly and obscure. So just want to let everybody know he is the last dinosaur, and he's my friend and a whole lot more.
Oh, it's so sweet.
So next week we are going to be watching Denver, the Last Dinosaur.
Damn it.
This is welcome.
This is the first time that I'm not like super excited, but who knows? I could be pleasantly surprised.
Shut up! It is amazing. I started watching it already. It's so wonderful.
Sean's getting ahead of the game.
Well, you know what, listeners? We're 2 for 3. That's a pretty good success rate.
Yeah, that's not bad. It's better than Congress. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 2 for 5 on decisions in my personal life, so 2 for 3 on this thing. We're good.
Yeah.
Whoa, are you really?
We're coming up aces.
I've boiled that down to the lowest common denominator, but yeah, I'm 2 for 5.
Yeah, okay.
All right, guys. So join in next time when we talk begrudgingly Denver, the Last Dinosaur.
Shut up.
We'll see you then.
Therapy. Like she's just sitting like on a therapist couch. She's like, my dad's half robot, half machine, but I'm really having a hard time.
And he's like 100% crimson, and he has a weird like bowl cut that I don't appreciate.
Sometimes his robotic part fuses with another guy's robotic parts. It's a weird thing.
It's the near future.
Once you factor in visitation rights, I mean, it just all comes together. A court order makes it make sense.
Well, since we've been talking about these characters a little bit, let's get into them too. And let's start with the title characters, the Centurions. What the hell are these guys all about?
Okay, so Max Ray is a, quote, brilliant sea operations commander. Didn't see a lot of the brilliance, but...
well, relative to the other two idiots running around.
Exactly. He's kind of like the de facto leader of the team. He really kind of... provides a lot of the, mission leadership, but his, Centurion outfit is basically set to operate in, sea conditions, and, some of his, actually, the stuff that they beam down to him is great. Jake Rockwell.
Well, let's talk about, so we said beam down to him. I feel like we're losing some people.
How did they beam them down?
What? So he's wearing, he's wearing this costume that's like a green... green like bodysuit with weird nodules all over it that looks like a Lego.
Right. It actually really works like a Lego. So Sky Vault, which is basically the depot for all of these different operations.
Hello, and welcome to Saturday Mourning Cartoons, the weekly podcast that revisits, reviews, and ridicules some of the world's weirdest animated series. I'm Dave Trumbore, and I'll be your daring on-air operations expert today. Joining me, as always, is the rock-solid and rugged land operations specialist, Sean Paul Ellis. How's it going, Sean?
David, I'm doing great. Yourself?
Woo. And from the Bay, our brilliant sea operations commander, Matt Barron.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
So if you might have recognized from that little intro that we did there, we are going to talk about Centurions today. If you're not familiar with the Centurions, I'm about to give you a little bit of a rundown. It's an 80s cartoon, which you could pretty much pick up probably just from those names that we threw around, or just the fact that it was a Ruby Spears production. Now, we've talked about those guys before. Not a big fan of the Ruby Spears folks over here, but they've definitely churned out some interesting series over the years. What was that? Was that Turbo Teen we talked about before that was Ruby Spears?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think it was too. So if you don't know what we're talking about, revisit that.
Classic Ruby Spears.
Classic Ruby Spears move. Yeah, so Ruby Spears, joint production with Japanese company Sunrise. The interesting thing about this one, actually, the comic book legends of Jack Kirby, who created Captain America, and Gil Kane, who either created or co-created more of the modern version.
Not really into those so much.
Not so much.
But essentially, it's your classic good versus evil. Doc Terror mixed with Hacker, plus the drones, really kind of just steam-headed everything. The thing that I found interesting about the two of them was that there were only two kind of cyborg commanders, and the rest of them were robots. There were no other, sort of man-Borg situations. But
I kind of feel like their quest, like Doc Terror's and Hacker's quest for like world domination and to like control the Earth, like I feel like it was a really lonely journey.
Yeah, there's no one with them, like Matt said, except all of those robots. There's a couple people peppered in.
There was Doc Terror's daughter, who was a smoking hottie. But I digress.
She shows up for like the first episode, and then we watched like the 5-part miniseries, which was season 1. And so Amber, Doc Terror's daughter, shows up in like the first episode, and then she disappears. And we didn't watch any more of the 5 episodes. I would love to know if she comes back.
I will tease you with this. I didn't get to watch these episodes because, like I said, there's 65 of them. I don't know exactly which one she pops up in. She does show up some more. I believe she has a twin sister. Stay with me now. Sister who is a practitioner of, I believe, dark magic. And
that sounds accurate.
Yeah, and Asa McCloud falls in love with it.
I hope the reason that she's been gone is she's just in
versions of Green Lantern, along with some other heroes. These guys both contributed to kind of the concept of the show and some of the designs. The designs are pretty interesting. We'll get to them in a little bit when we start talking about the characters.
It just sounded like when you said that, like you did an eye roll. Like
I kind of did.
These things. Fucking things.
Imagine yourself, and we'll talk about this, but imagine yourself turned into a giant, primary colored Lego, and you kind of got an idea of what's going on here.
I want it already.
It's so good. But so this one ran in 1986. It really only ran for about 7 or 8 months, but they churned out 65 episodes in those 7 or 8 months.
How many episodes constitutes a season in the 80s? Is it just like willy-nilly?
Well, apparently they had 2 seasons, one of 5 episodes and one of 60 episodes, so it was nicely balanced.
It's that classic Japanese efficiency.
Yeah, and speaking of that, since we're a model of efficiency here, that's kind of all you need to know about this one as far as the history. Not many of the voice actors are really that famous or well-known or did a lot of other voice acting work. Some of them went on and did other live-action work. Frank Welker's in there somewhere, who we've talked about a number of times on this show, but he's only really listed as additional voices, which means he probably did some just some random character voices or a lot of creature work. He was known for doing that too. So
he probably just did Lucy or Shadow.
Probably Lucy. God, what a character!
What a nightmare.
So I'm going to turn it over to Matt now, who's going to kind of give us a little bit of an intro on this show and what it was about.
So the premise is, and I've got to love this, like the classic near future, because in 1986, I've got to imagine the near future was probably in and about the year 2000.
Yep.
Which, my God, did they get it wrong? So,
wait, what do you mean?
Yeah. Oh, God, I've got this fucking jetpack strapped to my back. I mean, am I the only one? Am I it? Yeah.
But I just walk around in my Lego suit all day. I don't know what's wrong with me.
Exactly. So, you've got your classic evil genius, Doc Terror, who is a cyborg, and I've got to tell you, he is possibly the worst cyborg I've ever seen. But, he's got the classic, Napoleon complex, want to conquer the earth situation. He has a right-hand man who, ironically enough, has a mixer for a right hand.
He's a walking Cuisinart, yeah.
Exactly. KitchenAid just took their cues from them. So he is named Hacker, and he's the kind of sidekick and kind of the commander of the armies, if you will. And there were 3 types of drones that Doc Terror created. They were traumatizers, and God knows that was an
such a great name.
Which was they were basically the walking robots who had a rocket that shot out of their ass. Strafer, which were the flying robots. And I've got to tell you, I was kind of into the strafers. They look great. Groundborgs, not